Hey everyone, Pete here with Geek with Pete. I'm in the process of doing some upgrades to the cooling loop on Skynet over there, and it got me into thinking how there's a lot of different schools of thought to the correct way to flush a new radiator or to clean and flush an existing radiator that's been in a loop for some time. And I just wanted to give my input on it and what's worked best for me over my time in liquid cooling. You'll hear a lot of things about different people with different processes using chemicals, forcing pressurized water through there, and I personally don't do any of that. When I get a new radiator, my process is I will take the radiator and I will plug up all but two ports on it. Like we can see here at this radiator, I only have these two open. I will screw in a piece of hose with nothing fancy. You don't need a compression fitting or anything like that. I just use a barb fitting for this because it's not in the system. It doesn't need to be perfect. Connected to a funnel. This also doubles great for beer when you're done. So what I'll actually do is I will take some distilled water, put it in a tea kettle, heat it up. Not boiling. You don't want to go too hot and risk doing anything where you're doing a temperature shock to the radiator and do anything that could damage a solder or anything like that from a sudden change in temperature. But I'll heat up some water in a tea kettle, distilled water of course. I would say get it to about 70 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees Celsius. And then I'll mix it with some vinegar, roughly 20% white distilled vinegar. Once I do that, I will fill up the radiator with the vinegar and with the water vinegar mixture, I should say. And let it sit for about 5 minutes or so, just so that way it loosens anything that's in there from the factory. Then I will put in caps, plugs. If it's a new radiator, you should have the little plastic ones that came with it from the factory. If not, you could use G1/4 plugs. Screw them in there, shake it up, pour it out. Do that a couple times. Once you've gone through that initial phase of cleaning, remove the guesswork from the process. Don't just say, I think it's clean, or maybe I should do some more. Take the guesswork out of the equation. It's really easy to do that, really cheap, and you don't need anything special or fancy. The way I do it is I take a coffee filter, and I put it in the basin of my sink. Kitchen sinks all have the basin there where it's a little bit deeper, kind of acts like a little bowl. Put that in the basin. Naturally, I make sure the sink is very clean before. And then I pour out the radiator directly into the coffee filter. And I'll keep doing that until there are no longer any specks in the filter. Then I know it's clean. Once it's clean, then I'll do it 2 more times for good measure. And then once I'm done with that and I've done my good measure runs with the distilled white vinegar, warm water mixture, then I'll go through there with just cold, pure, straight distilled water to rinse out the vinegar. After all, you don't want it to be where once you run a benchmark or a stress test and your system heats up, you smell like you're making a salad in your office. So that's my process for a new radiator. It's worked well for me, and I recommend to do that with any radiator. Different brands have different claims. You'll hear some people say some brands are clean and ready to go right from the factory. Why risk it? You're investing the time and the money, and it's not cheap, in a custom loop. Give it a good flush before you put everything together. The best case scenario, you're removing a worry from your conscience. Worst case scenario, you could actually have a clog. And if you do get a clog, especially in one of the thin copper fins in like a CPU block or a GPU block, it's a real pain to clean out because they're so thin and so fine you can't go at them with a toothbrush or anything like that. I've had one before that was a little clogged up, and I ended up having to use multiple pieces of paper because of course they got soft. But a piece of paper was actually all I was able to fit in the grooves, so I let it soak in distilled white vinegar to loosen things up. And I went through there with a piece of paper, each individual run, and there must have been about 100 of them. It's real time consuming, real pain in the butt. So anytime you could avoid a situation like that with preventative maintenance and just good practice in your initial setup, you're definitely going to want to take those measures. Now, when you have an existing radiator that you want to clean out, whether it be gunked up or routine maintenance, it's going to be pretty much the same exact process. You're going to remove the radiator, fill it up with a warm mixture of distilled white vinegar and distilled water. Let it sit, shake it up, pour it out. Keep doing that until you no longer have any debris in your catch filter. By the way, if you don't have coffee filters, if you're a Keurig user or something like that, you could use a paper towel. It'll show up just the same. The water will pass through. Any debris will actually just sit there and show up clear as day on the white paper towel. But you'll keep on doing that. When it comes to actually physically cleaning the outside of the radiator, there's a few recommendations that we have there as well. First and foremost, just clean the fins with dust off. Radiator fins are very, very fragile. If you go at them with a toothbrush or a nail brush or any type of scrubbing, you're going to bend them up. Worst case scenario, you create a leak. Best case scenario, the fins get bent and it obstructs your airflow and it just harms your radiator's cooling performance. Either way, it's not good. Go through it with a can of dust off. Spray the opposite way the fans were pulling. So if you had your radiator mounted like this and fans were pulling up, your dirt's going to be down here. So you're going to spray down for your initial pass and then spray it everywhere to clean it up. As far as painting these, when they're used and you want to spruce them up and make them look good again, paint the outside if you want to, or if you need to. If you do paint where the fins are, go super, super thin and super, super light. Part of the things that make these radiators perform so well, regardless of the brand, just any quality of radiator, is the material that's here. You have copper or brass, in some cases aluminum, hopefully not though, but either copper or brass, and it relies on water contacting that metal, and then that metal transferring the heat from the water to the air. If you have paint there, or thick layers of paint, it's going to act as an insulator, which of course you don't want. You want that heat to transfer to the air. Some radiators, some Alpha Cool radiators too, you'll see this is actually still copper colored. They don't put any paint on at all. Where the paint's so thin, it still has a very coppery look to it, and just the black is on the very outside. I'm not sure if that's the intent or if they just go really thin and sometimes the copper shows more than not, but it's a pattern that I've noticed, and just something I wanted to make you guys aware of, because it's very tempting to hang one of these puppies up by a coat hanger and give them a nice thick coating of black engine enamel or something like that to shine them up, and that's fine. But if you do that, my recommendation is after everything's clean and dry, to mask off your fins and then actually paint the casing. And then once the casing is painted, if the fins really look bad, straighten them all out. Use something like a toothpick to gently straighten them out and remove things like this, which could happen very easily. And of course, be sure not to actually damage any of the copper runs while doing so. And then do a super, super, super light coat. When you're looking at it from the side, you're really not going to see any copper color or any discoloration. So the paint doesn't need to be deep. You don't want to harm the performance. But that pretty much covers my process for radiators. I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm not saying even that's the right way. I'm just saying that's what's worked for me and what hasn't given me any trouble and what hasn't broken any radiators or expensive PC components for me. If you guys have any feedback on processes that have worked well for you, shoot it out in the comments. Maybe we'll do another video on it. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we're going to be doing some upgrades over there to Skynet. That's actually part of what this is for. We'll do that in another video, and that'll be kind of a workshop video where we're actually doing that together, changing out the parts of the loop and upgrading some components and setting up a new drain system, which is a whole nother topic. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like it if you enjoyed it, dislike it if it sucked, leave comments regardless, and if you have any suggestions, feedback, or other methods, let me know.